guys, and a happy new year. Today I'm going to review a classic ghost story, and this one's called The Halfway House.
I say. Good afternoon, sir. You weren't there a moment ago, were you? Or were you? Sorry if I startled you, sir. Not at all. Are you the landlord?
The Halfway House came out in 1944 and is a British supernatural drama film. It was directed by Basil Dearden and is based on the play The Peaceful Inn by Denis Ogden. A 1957 BBC television film was also made of The Peaceful Inn. The film runs 95 minutes. The film is set in an old Welsh countryside inn, and the location footage for the film was shot at Devon, Somerset border. Mervyn Johns and Glynis Johns were real-life father and daughter, and they play father and daughter in the movie. Denis Dearden, the director, would later do the classic Dead of Night a year later, and this would also feature Mervyn Johns and Sally Ann Howes. The Halfway House stars Mervyn Johns, Glynis Johns and Sally Ann Howes. The film tells the story of 10 people who were drawn to stay in an old Welsh countryside inn. And the inn's run by this father and daughter who are actually spirits. And they're there to help these 10 people who have personal problems. So it's not really a horror film, it's more of a fantasy film. Because the ghosts are for once friendly. They're out to help these individuals. And Basil Dearden's the director, and it's interesting that a year later he does Dead of Night. And he's actually a really good director. Not only did he do this film and Dead of Night, he did the section that involved the hearse and the Lincoln theme stories of Dead of Night. But he also directed one of my favourite horror films, The Man Who Haunted Himself, that starred Roger Moore. I think that's his best film. So this film can be grouped into a section of films, all black and white ghost stories that featured great black and white photography. So the other films are The Uninvited from 1944, The Innocents from 1961, and my favourite horror film, The Haunting from 1963. And ghost stories always seem to work well with black and white photography, or if it is in colour, it has to be really dark, so it almost looks like black and white. And before I watched this film, I wasn't really expecting it to be much of a ghostly film. I knew it featured a Ouija board scene, and that was about it. I didn't expect it to be a proper fantasy film. I thought it was more of a drama film. So I was pleasantly surprised when I watched it. It comes across as a sort of... It's almost like an extended Twilight Zone episode from the 60s. Black and white and involving fantasy and all these different individuals that have to solve the personal problems by the end of the story. So it's very much like a Twilight Zone. So there's these 6 different plot threads where all these different people go towards the inn. So you get different characters. One's a conductor who finds out he hasn't long to live. Another one's a daughter trying to get her mum and dad together. You get someone from prison who's just been released, who's going to the inn. Then there's a couple who've lost their son and the mother's wanting to do the seance. There's a guy who's dabbling in the black market, and there's a newly married couple. So all 6 of these groups of people meet up at the ghostly inn. At first they can't see it because it got destroyed a year earlier, and then it suddenly appears to them. Hey Phil, my favourite pub was the Embassy, the one that Bernard Manning used to run, near Manchester. Hey Bones, I heard you got thrown out of the Embassy for making trouble. Bernard Manning threw you out.
It's a fucking disgrace.
Wah, he called us a bloody skinny bugger, didn't he? So I called him a fat cunt.
What a fucking disgrace.
So it's quite a unique film. You hadn't seen anything like this before. It was 1944, and the father and daughter who run the inn are ghosts themselves. So when they get inside the inn, they find out there's a calendar, and it's got the wrong date a year earlier. There's a newspaper that's a year earlier, And then they discover that the daughter doesn't cast a shadow or a reflection in a mirror.
There it is again. There's what again, old boy? Oh, that girl. She's definitely got no shadow. By Jove, you're dead right.
There's a really good bit where she's talking to the guy who's a music conductor. And he's the guy who's found out he hasn't got long to live. And he's talking to her and she says he's not to be frightened of dying. It's just like a door opening to somewhere else. Thought that was a great scene, that.
David, there's no need to be afraid. Everyone is frightened that sometime they will have to leave all they understand and love. Death is only a door opening, David. But it's better, they say, to walk up and knock bravely than to be carried through it.
You know, don't you, Willie?
Yes, David. I know.
And I love films that feature a seance. I always find them quite eerie. However, there's a fault in the film where this seance is badly done, unfortunately. There's a really stupid idea of wanting the ghost to knock the table for each word. So if it's a day, the ghost has to knock the table 4 times and eventually spell out names. But it's ridiculous. What happens if the person trying to contact has a long name? Yeah, bloody table knocking for each bloody letter in the alphabet. The bugger's a long name, they'll be knocking the bloody table all fucking night. Yeah, you're right, the phones will be knocking all night. And there's also a weird scene where the woman who's doing the seance, her husband tries to show her up because he doesn't believe in ghosts or anything. So he turns the radio on, trying to make on the voice is a ghost. But that doesn't really make sense. If he knows when to turn the radio on. So it's potluck what comes out the radio. And you'd think that they'd realise it was the direction of the sound would lead to the radio, so people wouldn't fall for that trick. But they're doing this film. But it was a really nasty trick that he played on his wife.
Well, there's lots of other chaps waiting to speak to their folk at home. So here's wishing you all the best. And a big hug, Mum, from your loving son.
Yeah, fancy the bugger using a radio to show his bloody wife up at the seance. What a bloody shithouse trick to do. So everything gets resolved at the end. Everyone's problems gets resolved. And the better people afterwards. When they leave the inn, they see it disappear because it got bombed a year earlier. So overall this proves what great films we got years ago, considering this was 1944. And how black and white photography seems to work really well in these ghostly type of films. And this film laid the groundwork for Dead of Night that the director would do a year later. So although it's not a classic, it's still a very good effort. So out of 10 I think I'd give this one a good solid 8. 8 out of 10. It's much better than I expected. So what do you think, Bones? Did you like it? I thought it was a good film, Phil. It was better than the bloody ghost story for Christmas this year. What was it called? Woman of Shite or something? Okay, everybody, bye. Like, subscribe and share. Bye, bye, bye.